The reaction from Trump supporters today. Now, in Sherlock Holmes territory, you call this the dog that didn't bark. Before Trump was ever indicted, he said if he was ever to be indicted, the country would rise up and protest. He said, we are going to have in this country the biggest protests we have ever had. In September, he said, if any prosecutor dared to indict him, quote, the people of the United States would not stand for it. Turns out the people of the United States would stand for it. Ahead of his first indictment in New York, Trump directed his supporters in all capital letters, it's time, protest, protest, protest. They did not. Only a small crowd turned out when he was first indicted in New York. A small crowd that included a substantial number of anti-Trump folks. It was all over in a couple of hours. Ahead of this federal indictment today, Trump once again told his supporters to protest. He told them to go to Miami, to convene there in a show of strength. Once again, no substantial crowd materialized. Yes, there were some Trump supporters there, but really no protest of any notable size. And of course, there's no shame in not having people protest your arrest and indictment. Except when you have begged people to and told people to, and in fact promised publicly that people would. And then not only did they not show up around the country, they didn't even show up at the site of your arraignment. That is not only personally embarrassing, it's potentially important for us as a country. You're looking here at some of the images that we saw today in Miami after Trump had called for his protesters from around the country to come to Miami to show strength in response to this. It was more sparse than I expected.
Yeah, going into today, the sort of scale was Manhattan, Manhattan arraignment to January 6th, right? Like the worst case scenario, of course, January 6th, the sort of most sort of like humiliating, ridiculous being Manhattan. And it was basically like Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I think there's a few things to think of. One is Donald Trump's a con man if he's anything, and it's projecting power and competence and confidence that makes him who he is. And like, this is embarrassing for him, as was the Manhattan thing. Maybe he doesn't have the power to just instruct people in the way that he wants everyone to think he does. Number two, 1,000 prosecutions of the January 6th insurrectionists probably weighs heavily on the kind of person who would be contemplating whether they're going to go to the federal courthouse and engage in mayhem or mischief. And I think that, like, we are seeing a deterrent effect. In fact, you see it in the channels in which these people speak. You see it in the messages to them from far-right media figures about, like, don't fall into the Fed's traps and all this stuff. And number three, just because the gun doesn't fire doesn't mean he didn't try to fire it. Which is to say, in the run-up to Manhattan and to yesterday, he was clearly trying to use his platform and use the same language he used in the run-up to January 6th to create a situation of mayhem like what he did in January.
Be wild.
Yes.
Yeah. And apparently the Proud Boys who had planned, there was all the reporting in advance that they were going to march. They didn't show up, and maybe having their, their president, their leader, indicted on seditious conspiracy sobered the mind, and they said, you know what, maybe not.
I got to tell you, both of these are exactly what I expected. After January 6th, a lot of lessons were learned. All the really bad ones are in prison already. And Donald Trump, I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect in Manhattan, but I went down there and I saw it, because he asked for them. He didn't ask so directly for them to come.
Well, he said, see you in Miami.
But because they refused to come to Manhattan, Trump knows better than any of us, they're not coming. Yeah. They are not coming. They won't come to Georgia. They're not coming. That stuff is completely over, exactly as I expected in both cases. He doesn't have that anymore. They're not going to do it for him again.
And it will be interesting to see if he adjusts and stops promising, threatening, asking for, begging for that to happen when it now repeatedly doesn't.
He has toned down the begging dramatically. He's adjusted a lot.
Well, he did give them the address and say, see you there.
Sure. Yeah.
And he had to go to Versailles to get the love. Like, to get the love that he needs and to get the love that's his fuel, he had to go to.